My brother made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant. Now, he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother, David, has always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards me. If you think it stemmed from jealousy, you'd be wrong. He was the favored child, not me. There was no reason for him to be envious. To give you some context, our mother always indulged David. He was the golden child of our family. She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with his schoolwork. I was expected to assist him simply because we were family, but I never received the same consideration. I accepted this, as I was quite independent. Perhaps it was partly my fault for always meeting his needs without expecting anything in return. He never helped me when I needed it and only approached me when he wanted something. While I was a quiet, introverted kid who enjoyed studying and keeping to myself, he was loud and rough, just like our dad. I also tend to be straightforward and honest, never sugarcoating things. I believe my mother may have developed a negative perception of me because of my straightforwardness. This favoritism made David the family's darling, and I didn't mind it while we were growing up. However, problems began when he started bullying and mocking me for being different from him. He would tease me about my height and the fact that I wore glasses. He would sneak into my room, read my diary, and then complain to my mom about what I had written. When I yelled at him and complained to our parents about him invading my privacy, they would laugh it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. He did more awful things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my food. He even once put little stones in my cereal, but luckily I found them before they could damage my teeth. When I told my mom, she dismissed it, saying, "This is how brothers bond." Whenever we fought, David would zero in on my insecurities to insult me. We went to the same school, so he knew I was being bullied by a few kids. Instead of supporting me, he sided with the bullies, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey and encouraging them to physically harm me, saying I was just a big failure. Another time, during a fight over something trivial that I can't even remember, he told me to kill myself. While I could easily brush off most insults, that one really hurt because I was struggling with my mental health at the time. I'm doing better now, but it was devastating to hear that my own brother wanted me dead. Since Dad was often at work and Mom didn't seem to care much, she even scolded me once, claiming it was my fault for irritating him. Things progressively worsened during high school. There was a shocking incident when David attempted to set my hair on fire, and unbelievably, our mother defended him, claiming he was merely playing. Seriously, who behaves like that? Thankfully, my dad eventually sided with me and pointed out the gravity of the situation. He even threatened to call the police on David. This moment was a real eye-opener for my brother, as he had never faced any consequences for his actions before. He was genuinely stunned, and my dad made it clear that enough was enough and that David needed to start respecting his older brother. Later, Dad came into my room to talk. I never expected his support because he always told David how similar they were, which was true. Dad admitted that he had waited for years, hoping David would mature, but he was slowly realizing that David was becoming a big bully. Hearing this from my dad was incredibly validating, and I almost broke down in tears. I confessed everything David had done to me over the years and even mentioned the bullying at school. My dad was shocked at how much I had endured. The next day, he spoke to the principal to ensure the bullies were warned about severe consequences if they continued. Later that evening, Dad enrolled me in MMA at our local gym, telling me I needed to man up and stand up to the bullies in my life. I admit that a nerdy kid like me trying to learn to fight might have seemed laughable, but I was very focused. I managed my time well to balance my studies and daily workouts, and the MMA classes completely changed my life and physique. One day, David was up to his antics again. He stole my pocket money, which we received for helping with chores. I had been saving it for a while. David sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him just as he was about to cycle off with his friends. I demanded he return my money, but David mocked me, saying all I could do was run to Daddy for help. I don't know what came over me, but I punched him in the face. He was stunned, fell backward, and I retrieved my money from his pocket before throwing him back down. David started crying loudly, which was quite comical. However, my mother rushed out to help him and find out what happened. When she learned I had fought him, she was surprised and reprimanded me, saying I should be a better role model for David, who seemed to enjoy seeing me scolded. My mother also complained to my dad about my behavior, saying I needed to be controlled. My dad grimly asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how David had stolen the money I had worked hard for and saved, while David tried to justify it by saying he needed the money for a date and that, as his brother, I should help him. However, Dad told David he was lucky I only punched him for stealing because anyone else would have called the police. He continued to tell David that he had no right to take other people's things without their consent. David didn't like that and threw a tantrum, likely hoping our mother would side with him, but Dad remained firm. When David realized he wasn't going to be punished for being hit, he screamed how much he hated me and ran back to his room, locking himself in. Following that incident, David began to distance himself from me. He had finally understood that he couldn't bully me anymore, and that even Dad had stopped supporting his antics. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were equals. Though he could no longer physically harm me, he resorted to verbal insults when our parents weren't around. His behavior worsened with age, becoming angrier and more short-tempered each year. When I approached him with a question, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering insults like nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed to communicate something, he would relay it through our mother instead of speaking to me directly. When I questioned her about why David couldn't just talk to me, she would urge me to be more understanding. I couldn't tell if it was just puberty or genuine hatred. Over time, dealing with his comments became unbearable, and I longed to move out and get away from him. I repeatedly asked my mother to mediate a sit-down conversation for us to resolve our issues, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. When I asked her opinion on why David treated me this way, she would brush off the question. Eventually, I left for my dream university, having earned a scholarship as a top student. My dad threw a party for me, and even my mom seemed proud. However, David remained aloof and distant, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left for university was a mix of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic home environment. The first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started to build a life separate from the oppressive atmosphere of my childhood. The constant fear of David's verbal attacks lifted, giving me a newfound sense of peace. During my second year, I met my wife, Karen, at a frat party through a friend, and we immediately clicked. Coming from a religious background, having kids outside of marriage was frowned upon. However, when we discovered she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to marry right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony. Our parents were happy for us, and we enjoyed the celebration. At that moment, I believed Karen was the love of my life. I had always envisioned a monogamous relationship, one woman to come home to and share my life with. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything because I was genuinely content in my marriage. Karen was my dream girl, and I never wanted to hurt her. However, I later uncovered 2 incidents of infidelity in our marriage. One was an intermittent affair with her married coworker that spanned several years, and the other was a brief fling with an ex-boyfriend during a visit to her family. Some might think I was naive, and looking back, I can't completely disagree. Each time we separated for a while, I chose to forgive my wife. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home and believed we could overcome these obstacles. The affair with her co-worker happened when we were young, and I attributed it to youthful mistakes and poor judgment. For a period, things seemed to get better, although I could never fully trust her again. I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose to forgive, I had to genuinely work toward a fresh start. It's been 4 years since her second betrayal, and I felt confident in my decision to give her another chance. Karen seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, planning our family's future. However, 3 months ago, my world was shattered once more when she revealed that she had been having a long-term affair and suggested that our son might not be mine. Thank you for sticking with me through this journey. It's been an incredibly difficult experience, but I'm finally finding peace and clarity. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us in ways we never expected. But through it all, I've learned the importance of standing up for myself, prioritizing my own well-being, and cutting toxic people out of my life. To anyone going through something similar, remember that you deserve respect, love, and support. It's okay to let go of people who don't treat you right, even if they're family. Don't be afraid to seek help, and take care of your mental health. If you've been impacted by my story or if you've got your own experience to share, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And as always, thank you for your support. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.